Hey there, Philly D and the DeFranco Nation Movie Club. Craig the Critic here. And before we talk about the movie today, I just want to say a big shout out to Mr. DeFranco. I want to thank you for doing this movie club for these 30 days. I'm loving it. Film is my passion, and talking about movies is something that I just do whether I like it or not. And so I figured, hey, put a camera in front of me and share it with you and the rest of the DeFranco Nation Movie Club. So I'm digging it. Anyway, I wanted to say thank you. Thank you. Okay, on to the film review of Cocaine Cowboys. This 2006 documentary explores the world of cocaine in the 70s and 80s as it really sprung up and grew out of Miami, Florida, and became an epidemic in the States, but primarily in Miami. And the movie really focuses on the impact that this had on the city of Miami. Lots of gruesome footage and newsreel stuff where they show lots of dead, killed people, even some chopped up. I was actually quite surprised at the footage they got. It felt like Scarface, but it was real, which kind of made it frightening. I was impressed with how they contrasted the price that the city was paying in crime and violence with the benefits, actually, of the cocaine industry, which was a booming real estate market. The banks were laughing. The commercial industry was huge because you had all these super rich drug dealers, and they had money to spend, money to burn. And so they were buying up cars and houses and making clubs and partying, and it just became a very wealthy city with hundreds and hundreds of people being killed each year. So it was interesting how they showed that contrast and really explored the cost of the drug industry with some of the benefits that come with a booming money-making industry like drugs. The film had a lot of really interesting characters. Most of them were the actual drug dealers and people affiliated with the crime back then. In fact, I'd say that was predominantly who was talking in the film. And so I gotta say, this was sort of actually, to me, a down point of the film. While it was interesting and fascinating, and certainly, you know, coming from the horse's mouth, so to speak, it did lack an emotional resonance because all the people who were talking were really bad people who you didn't feel sorry for, you had no empathy or sympathy for. And so the film, I felt, lacked in that emotional pull. Any great film, including documentaries, needs to have a human journey, a human story that's being told, and one that we can relate to as an audience. Michael Moore does this brilliantly, actually almost over the top, in fact. He really pulls heartstrings in his documentaries. But that's an example of a filmmaker who, even in documentaries, is grabbing the human element and bringing you into their journey and making you feel deeply. And I felt like Cocaine Cowboys really lacked in that emotional resonance. While, you know, the violence and hearing about children being killed and those kinds of things in Miami in the day, that was, you know, emotional. But those were moments of kind of shock and dismay at events that happened. It didn't really pull at the heartstrings, so to speak. So I felt like that was really the downside of this movie. Although it's still an interesting film, I did find myself getting bored at times because it seemed like a lot of the same old information and storytelling without really drawing in the human interest, because you're dealing with just bad people. The other one little funny thing I gotta say is, the beginning of the film they show the credits, and one that stuck out to me was Jan Hammer, the guy who wrote the Miami Vice theme song. I grew up on Miami Vice, so I recognized his name right away, and I thought, cool, Jan Hammer is doing the soundtrack for this film. How wicked. And it was wicked for the first 5 minutes. And then the film doesn't feel like Miami Vice. It's not slick and flashy. It's showing the underbelly of Miami in the 80s. And so the Jan Hammer music all of a sudden became weird. I found it actually distracting in the film. It was something where at first it was kitschy, and then as you're dealing with this real life underbelly stuff and you got all this funky little, you know, synthy 80s music playing, it was discordant. It was odd. So yeah, a bad choice in my mind. So overall, good documentary, very interesting, especially if you're interested in things like the drug trade. This is definitely a fascinating look at a period of time in American history. Very thorough in its in what it told, but again, it just lacks the human touch, the human element. But overall, interesting doc, and those are my thoughts. I'm Craig the Critic. Thanks for dropping by, and we'll see you next time.